Now, once you have finalized the vendor, say we are vendor X, what are the next steps involved? The next step is the first bullet point, which you can see. The shortlisted vendor generally share the list of laws applicable to the organization. How he will share? Because you have already shared at the preliminary stage your nature of operations or the nature of locations. So he will make a list of laws which will be shared with the client. Once you receive the list of laws, present it to your committee members, to your functional head. These are the, say, 100 laws which, as per the vendor, are applicable to the company, and take the sign off of your committee members. It may be possible there may be 102 or it may be 98. Your functional head is a more in a what should I say, in at expert place where they can mention that no, this law is not applicable, or in addition to 100 there are 2, 3, 4 or 5 laws or more applicable. So you add on that laws or delete the laws and give your feedback to the vendor. Basis your feedback, the vendor will finalize the draft laws. These are the laws, and on the that basis vendor will start working the draft checklist of for your company location wise, because you have already shared in which locations what kind of operations are going on. So vendor will prepare the checklist and share the checklist with coordinator of the project. Once you have received the draft checklist, disseminate that checklist with the corporate office representative. In the corporate office, you have a different function like HR, admin, taxation. Same way, you have a units, you have offices, you have sites. So disseminate those location-wise checklists to the coordinator of those sites, which if you remember, in the first slide I mentioned, who is the point of coordination at the location. What they have to do, once you have received the checklist, what are the next steps? You have to fill the name of the persons and their email IDs against each compliance line item. Because once you receive a checklist, it's a very comprehensive document which contains of thousands or 500, 600, depending on the number of offices or the locations, how many compliance line item. Against each line item, you have to fill at least basic details of the names of the persons who are responsible for the compliance. Now, if you see the person responsible for the compliance, some vendors say owner, some vendors says it is auditee, some vendors say maker. It is like a maker checker. That these are the persons who are responsible for the compliance. So in the name, in the column, you have to fill their name as well as their email ID. Now, the next party is reviewer, auditor, or checker. They are the persons who review the compliances which are reported by the owner, auditee, maker in the system. They have to approve it. So you have to fill their name as well as their email ID also. Now, in some of the companies, particularly the manufacturing company I have experienced, there are 3-stage approval is involved. So ultimately, it is the site head or the manufacturing head. He will give the approval that yes, whatever the compliance reported by auditee in the system, approved by the auditor, is finally approved by me. Because you know, in the factory side, it is the factory manager who is, the factory head is generally he's the factory manager, and ultimately he is responsible for all the industrial and labor laws of the company. Along with these 3 details, if possible, map the functional heads at corporate office or head office for each compliance, including compliance of your unit as well as offices. I will tell you the reason why I am saying this in the next slide. While finalizing the above details of the owner, auditee, reviewer, approver, please also review the following points thoroughly at the time of finalizing the checklist, because this is very critical stage, very, very important stage. Your system success depend on how seriously you review the checklist at this stage, how seriously you review the name of owner, reviewer, approver. Now, functions and departments, because when the vendor share its checklist, they, with their own list understanding, give the name of the function or the department against a compliance. But as per your organization structure, you have to see whether this the name of the department is correct or not. If it is not, then rectify it. Attachment proof of compliance. Make sure that this is uniform across all the functions, all the laws of the organization. If I tell you my experience. In my previous company, there was a distorted checklist. At one location for say HR, payment of wages and compliance, somewhere at X location, the attachment proof of payment of wages, it is mandatory. And in other location, Y location, the proof of payment of wages, it is optional. Now, I used to find a very difficult, find very difficult while reviewing the compliances. So you have to ensure, you have to take into confidence your vendor that attachment proof of compliance, wherever it is mandatory, it should remain mandatory across the organization. Wherever it is optional, it should remain optional across the organization. I will tell you the advantages of this, why I'm emphasizing on these points. Same way, frequency of compliance, because some compliances which are of statutory payment in nature or filing of return, of course, their frequency, neither vendor can disturb it nor organization can disturb it. It has to be as per the law. But there are certain procedural compliances, like there has to be an adequate light at the shop floor. I'm just giving an example. There have to be spittoons in the factory. It is a procedure, maintaining registers and record. The frequency of compliance of those units have to be uniform across the organization. This is a difficulty I also faced, where we, along with the Complinity, we did a lot of exercise and we come at finally we were successful at the end of the day. Now, after doing this, you have to decide the escalation matrix or alert days for each compliance. Why escalation matrices? Please understand, escalation matrix is like reminding of the compliances to the owner, like in the company secretarial department. Somebody is responsible for filing of the form with the ROC. Somebody is responsible for filing with the stock exchange. Now, depending on the compliance, who is the owner or the auditee, which I have explained you in, who is responsible for that compliance. So decide the number of days before which, the due date before which he will receive the alert. Okay, this compliance is approaching. I have to submit this compliance. So it will act like, it will have two advantages. First, it will give a reminder to the person, complete the compliance on the ground, file the return, give the intimation to the stock exchange. And second is that in the system, you have to report the compliance. So 10 days in advance before the due date, which is fixed in the system, owner will get an alert. This compliance is approaching. Now, it may be possible that because of your preoccupation or you still have a time, you are preoccupied, you are not able to attend the compliance for next 3 days. Then a second level escalation will go to your checker or to your head that this compliance is already becoming due, it is approaching. Please advise your owner, maker to report the compliance in the system. So it's kind of a more, you are making a system more robust. And this, mind you, 10, 7, 3 days, which I have mentioned, it is just, it's a suggestion. It all depends on your organization, what days you advance, how many days you agree with your vendor. It can be modified also. In my previous stint, this was the escalation matrix. That's why I have written it. Now, suppose even after 7 days, till 3 days, you are not able to report the compliance in the system. Then the final approval, in the case of factories or unit, an alert will go. Only 3 days are left. The concerned owner auditee has not reported the compliance in the system. This kind of a system will give an alarm to the unit head. Okay, either the compliance has not been done or it has been done, but it has not been reported in the system. And let me tell you, friends, even if you are doing the compliances on ground but not reporting in the system, it is as good as actually in a non-compliance, because it will flash a data at the end of the period when your compliance officer review, and then there will be a lot of emails exchanged why data is not been reported. So this is how it is. And once, even if 3 days have passed by and system has crossed the due date of the compliance, suppose the compliance date was 5th of September, and till 5th of day, you have not reported the compliance in the system, an alert will go to your compliance officer at the corporate office, or to your CFO, or all to your whole-time director, depending on which person you have mapped in your, that the compliance have become an overdue. It will raise an alarm at the corporate office level, and necessary mails will go to the concerned person that please submit the compliance. Either you tell me the reason whether you have not done the compliance or you have done the compliance but not reported in the system. Now, post submission of compliance, same way, when the owner submit the compliance, a reminder will go to the auditor. When auditor approve in the system, it will go to the final approver in the case of a manufacturing unit to approve the compliance. The parties at A and B, once post, they have an option to reject. Many tools provide that suppose they feel that the system has not been reported properly, they can reject the compliance, and again it will go back to the owner auditee with the remarks of the person who have rejected. Please submit the system compliance properly. Now I have here one suggestion to all the persons. If any non-compliance is reported, suppose some owner, auditee or maker has reported non-compliance, not complied, an alert should immediately go to the compliance officer at the corporate office or final approver at the plant or functional head, so that timely corrective actions can be taken. Because once an owner submit the compliance, the reviewer has an option to either approve or reject the compliance. And it may be possible compliance has actually been done, but inadvertently it has been reported not complied, or he is not aware of the full knowledge and inadvertently he has reported not complied, but actually it is complied. So that is why this alert plays an important role at that stage, so that at the end of the day, when the compliance is finally approved in the system, at least you have saved the damage. You have to also map the one-time compliances like certificate of incorporation, consent to establish. You have to give just one date while finalizing the checklist that yes, this is a date, so that this compliance will come only once in the lifetime of the tool. Now, while finalizing the system, there are certain issues which you will face, or the persons who have already implemented, how to map event-based compliance, like issue of right shares, bonus shares, accidents in a factory. These are event-based compliance. If event happened, you have to report. If event doesn't happen, you need not to report. Now, there are two ways of handling this. One option is keep them as a running compliance with a predefined frequency, which will appear whether event has happened or not, irrespective of the happening of event. Now, what is the downside of this? Downside is your compliance burden will increase of reporting in the system. Now you have a second option. Option is some tools give a option of triggering the event. Like suppose a company secretary in the department, the secretarial department knows my rights issue is board has approved the rights issue, or my board has approved the owner's bonus shares. You will trigger on the bonus shares, and all the compliances relating to the bonus shares will start appearing with a predefined frequency. So I feel this approach is more scientific in nature, but user have to be made aware thoroughly about the functionality of the system, because unless and until you don't trigger it, this compliance will not appear on your home page, compliance page, and the compliance will be missed. Some system also provide a feature that a mail confirmation during a particular period is sent to the owners, confirm whether events have taken place or not. So it is kind of a reminder to the owners that there are certain events loaded in your system. Please ensure those events have not taken place. Some systems even also allow to generate a compliance certificate with a confirmation that specified events have not taken place. So the unit head who is giving the certificate, at least he is aware while giving the certificate which is generated for the system that events have not taken place, or if event has taken place, he will give the direction to his employees to please generate the event and report the compliances.
Amit, I'm conscious of the time, so just wanted to alert you. Try and wrap up in 5-7 minutes, because there are some questions coming up in the Q&A box as well. So
I'm going fast.
All right.
Yeah. Now there are certain compliances which are based on a multiple assets functions in the same unit, like you have 5 boilers, 4 vehicles, 6 lifts in a single unit. How to map the compliances, because there is always a unique compliances map. Now, if there is option one is you map the multiple compliances depending on your number of, suppose you have 5 boilers, map the 5 line items in the compliance tool. Second option is you insert a field in your compliance tool against a particular line item that unless and until you do not fill the number of assets, the system will not close, and the number should be 1 or higher. But user must be made aware thoroughly about the functionality of the system to make it more robust. Choice depends on you how to make it. Options are available. Conclusion, compliances should not be missed from reporting in the system. Same way, people sometimes struggle about the condition of the licenses and approval. Same approach, either you can map one general compliance that all the conditions, all the laws of the my licenses approvals have been complied with. There is a one line item, you will approve it, okay. And the second option is break down the condition of each license approval, unique compliances, and each compliance condition have to be approved in a system like in a normal manner. Again, the mantra is compliances should not be missed from reporting in the system. So options are available. You have to explore with your vendor. Now there are three, you have to also do the risk categorization. There are generally three types of risk: high, medium, low. Generally, we recommend high: suspension of license or imprisonment or fine above a threshold. Say you decide above 1 lakh, it is risk is high. It is just a recommendatory figure. You can decide 5 lakh, you can decide 50,000. Then you have a medium risk below the 1 lakh and but above a say particular threshold, say 50,000. So between 1 lakh to 50,000, it is my medium risk. And then you can decide less than 50,000, it is my low risk. So figures are in your hand. You have to decide in consultation with your vendor. So once you have done this exercise, you are good to go and give your checklist to your vendor to take next course of action. Now, how does the compliance page look like? Many people who have a compliance tool, they are aware about this, but many people who are not, it gives you a general feature of the compliance. When you are compliance page, sorry, first of all, I should tell what is compliance page. Compliance page is a page where you have to report the compliance in the system. So it gives you information about unique compliance ID, compliance act name, compliance relevant section, description of the compliance attachment, whether it is mandatory, optional, relevant form number, due, what is the due date and actual date of compliance, location, department, what are the internal guidelines, procedure to comply, what is the category, whether it is displaced compliance, register, penalty, risk, history of compliance, in past what you have written, helpline number. If you are finding it difficult, you can contact the vendor. What is your approval hierarchy, which I have explained you in the previous slides, and the remarks, comments. Once you have given the compliance checklist and you have become the familiar with this page, you have to do the testing before making the live. So vendor will integrate the checklist in the system. It will upload on your client server. Vendor will make it live on a dummy basis because you have to test whether the checklists are working properly or not. You have to give a training to your users with a designated and with the help of the vendor. The login ID and password of the users will be created by the vendor, which will be distributed to the users. So user will start reporting the compliance in the system on a dummy basis to know whether the system is functioning properly. You have to review the functioning of the system. You should generate the reports, test whether compliances due dates are correctly appearing, whether frequency is okay, whether attachment is okay. You have to review both Excel-based download reports as well as the system. Then whatever the shortcomings are there during this testing stage, please share your feedback with the vendor so that vendor can take appropriate actions and remove the deficiency. Again, check the system after the deficiencies have been removed before making the live, and still if there are some nitty-gritties, please sort it out with the vendor. Last but not the least, at this stage, give an administrator rights to the person at the corporate office. Like I was the administrator in the Jubilant. I used to have a multiple rights of making the users, making the inactive users, making the active users, changing their email ID, reviewing the compliance data for the company as a whole, download the reports. Same way at each location, the concerned person of the location wise will have a data to see the system so that he can chase up with the people who are not uploading the compliances, who are not. So he has a right limited to that system only, but his rights is limited compared to the administrator at this corporate office level. Now, this is the last stage. Once your system is live, you should also review it time to time so that it attains a maturity, and once it has attained the maturity, it remains sustainable. The central administrator, designated person at the corporate office, and the local administrator at the unit office, he will review the system on a daily basis, chase the people, please close the compliance, because overdue compliances are not good or not healthy sign for this company, because it shows the people are not taking the system seriously. Check whether compliances are reported properly or not. Some compliances may be reported complied, but actually not complied, or vice versa. If possible, explore with the vendor the use of artificial intelligence in case you have a paucity of time or the resources. Prepare a presentation of the compliances which you have reviewed. Make a presentation for your presentation to be given to your compliance committee periodically, so that they came to know what is happening at the ground level, and also provide a presentation to your risk committee and the audit committee. Give a snapshot that how many compliances during a quarter were reported complied, how many not complied, so that your risk management committee or audit committee is able to discharge the functions which are enshrined in the listing regulation, the Companies Act. If possible, obtain a system-based compliance certificate from the concerned person in each location, which is addressed to your compliance head, CFO, whole-time director, depending on your organization structure, basis which a consolidated compliance certificate will be placed before the board. There is one my suggestion. Please use the language in the board certificate as compliances have been materially complied. Don't write it, all the compliances have been complied with. This is my experience. My board refused to accept the certificate because it may be possible there may be a technical or trivial non-compliances, and whereas you are giving a clear compliance certificate. So it's kind of a false certification, but here materially complied will save your skin. In parallel, you prepare a small templates of your units, offices, and Excel-based, and obtain their labor law EHS information, which will help you to understand, to review the compliances, like how many workers are employed in your unit, whether apprentices are employed, what is the payment of wages rate. This will help you to review the system when you are reviewing the compliances from the system. Get the weekly, monthly, quarterly legal updates from the systems vendor, along with the relevant notification. Escalate to your concerned user so that they are aware of the legal changes. If agreed by the management, this is very, very important. Get the compliance tool periodically audited by a third party, maybe once in 3 years. Have a cross-functional audit so that whether there are gaps in the checklist, whether there are gaps in the system, place that report which you get it from the third party to your audit committee or risk management committee and take corrective action. Modify your HR processes of relieving of employee, because sometimes what happens, I have practically seen this, a user is responsible for a compliance, he leave the organization and the compliance remain unattended. So over after at the end of 3 months, I came to know, oh, these compliances have overdue because compliance have late. So make a condition of your relieving form whether the compliances which are applicable to the concerned person have been transferred to the other employee or not. Unless and until that condition is not fulfilled, don't relieve your employee. Compliance tool can be also used as a tracker of various agreements or various SOPs or various internal policies before expiry formally terminate the agreement.
Welcome to Complinity Technologies. Complinity is India's leading governance, risk and compliance software helping companies to manage their compliance, contracts, litigation, legal updates, inter-financial controls and more. Complinity is a one-stop shop for all GRC needs. With our proprietary 12 GRC modules and real-time legal updates on 2,000 plus laws and 24,000 plus compliances, all in an integrated platform that is easy to use with automated alerts and risk management capabilities, is why compliance managers, general counsels and chief financial officers choose Complinity every time. Join the most innovative and prestigious brands that use Complinity. Automating your compliance management. Request a demo at complinity.com.